It's 7:30 p.m. across India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Kate Fisher. Hi, Kate.
Hi, good morning, Tanvi. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Kenyan President William Ruto is here in Washington for a state visit, the first from a sub-Saharan Africa since 2008. And it's officially election season in the UK as party leaders launch their campaigns for the July 4th vote. But first, back to you, Tanvi, in Delhi with the rest of the day's top stories.
At least 7 dead in Russian strikes on Kharkiv. Moscow says it will strike British targets if UK weapons are used to hit its territory. Advocates for a weapon-free space. French President Emmanuel Macron visits riot-hit New Caledonia, says voting law reform has democratic legitimacy, but its ratification would depend on how situation evolves. Adds the island's political future should include citizens' referendum. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and opposition leader Keir Starmer kick off their campaigns after the announcement of July 4 elections. Kenya and the US agree on a $3.6 billion highway deal as President William Ruto becomes the first African leader in more than 15 years to make an official state visit to the United States. Russian forces launched massive strikes on Ukraine's northeastern city of Kharkiv on Thursday, resulting in the deaths of at least 7 people. The Russian attacks caused damage to the railway infrastructure in Kharkiv and its neighboring areas, injuring at least 24 people. Russian troops declared control over Adrivka village in the eastern Donetsk region of Ukraine. Earlier on Thursday morning, a series of explosions rocked the Russian city of Belgorod, though no casualties were reported following a missile alert. DD India's Megumi Lim joins us live from Kiev now. Megumi, fighting is continuing in Kharkiv region after Russian forces launched a ground offensive last week. What is the current battlefield situation there?
That's right. As you said, fighting has indeed continued in Ukraine's Kharkiv region since Russian forces launched their ground offensive last week. In Ukraine's northeast, there are street battles taking place in the town of Vovchansk, just 5 kilometers from the Russian border. Now, Ukraine is saying that they still control about 60% of the town. This is where Russian forces advanced towards when they launched a ground incursion, and this place has become the focal point of ongoing battles. But indeed, street battles are taking place, and according to Ukraine's top commander Alexander Syrsky, he's saying that Russian troops are suffering heavy losses there. We do not know the kind of losses Ukrainian troops are suffering. They do not disclose their own losses, but according to Syrsky, Russia is having to deploy more reserves, more troops from different sectors and directions to Vovchansk to continue their assault on the town. Now, farther west from Vovchansk in the town of Lipsy, this is also another sector where Russian forces launched their incursion into. There's also fighting going on there, but according to Syrsky, Russian forces have reportedly switched to a more active defense posture. They are reportedly laying down landmines around the village of Lipsy while continuing to strike at Ukrainian positions. Now, it appears that Russian forces are still trying to advance towards the city of Kharkiv, although analysts have said that they do not have the resources to capture Ukraine's second largest city. But it appears that they are trying to get close enough, at least 20 kilometers close enough, so that Kharkiv city will be within their artillery range. Now, if this happens, this would mean more devastation, more destruction on Ukraine's second largest city, making life incredibly untenable for the people living there.
Thank you, Megami, for those updates. In a new statement, Russia's foreign ministry said on Thursday that it continues to advocate for a weapon-free space following a failed Russian-drafted resolution that called on all UNSC countries to prevent for all time placement, threat or use of any weapons in outer space.
The Russian Federation, being an author of a number of fundamental incentives aimed at prevention of arms race in space, will continue to make its contribution to keep the space free of any weapons. It will prevent turning space into yet another sphere of armed confrontation. We will continue to promote exclusively peaceful exploration of space for the benefit of entire humankind and on equal basis.
Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova added on Thursday that Moscow will retaliate with strikes on British targets if British weapons are used by Ukraine in the conflict. This was in response to British Foreign Secretary David Cameron's statement on Ukraine's right to use weapons provided by London to hit targets inside Russia.
On May 6th, in a Russian Foreign Ministry statement, we directly said that in response to strikes using British weapons against the territory of our country, we may strike any British military objects and weaponry in Ukraine and beyond.
On to the US now. The White House plans to designate Kenya as the first key non-NATO ally in sub-Saharan Africa as President William Ruto is hosted by his US counterpart Joe Biden. My colleague Kate Fisher is in Washington, D.C. She gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Kate, bilateral talks between Nairobi and Washington continuing?
Yes, you're right, Tanvi. US President Joe Biden and Kenyan President William Ruto are set to announce today investments in green energy and health manufacturing in Kenya with a plan to reduce its debt burden. President Ruto's visit is the first such state visit by a leader from sub-Saharan Africa since 2008, and it coincides with a deal under which both countries have signed a $3.6 billion agreement to build a 440-kilometre highway between Kenya's capital and the port city of Mombasa. President Biden will also designate Kenya as a major non-NATO ally, making it the first sub-Saharan African nation to receive this position. Currently, 18 countries are designated as non-NATO allies, and they include Israel, Brazil, and the Philippines. On Thursday, more primary elections will be held here in the US, with the state of Idaho going to the polls and the Republican Party holding a convention in Texas to decide on key roles, offering more indications on the support for the presumptive presidential nominees, current President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Well, DD India's Caroline Malone has this report from Washington.
On Thursday evening, in the US state of Idaho, the Democratic Party will be holding a presidential caucus. That's a state that's already held its presidential election primaries for the Democratic Party, but this is another chance to show what kind of support President Biden has and amongst the other candidates who are vying for the position. There are 6 other people who are on the ballot for this Democratic primary. Biden already has shored up enough support in the state, but it will be clear whether he has full support depending on how much people decide to put their votes in for these other candidates. In that state, they'll also be deciding which delegates get to attend the Democratic Convention in Idaho happening later this year. Whereas on Thursday in the state of Texas, the Republican Party will be holding one of its conventions. At that event, they'll be deciding on future positions, including the chair of the party for the state of Texas. In that election, it's a very tightly fought position, and it could influence how much overall support is given both to the likely presidential candidate for the Republicans, Donald Trump, and to other state positions, as well as to senators who are potentially being re-elected in the state later in the year. Overall, though, Trump has not been able to campaign at events because of the ongoing criminal cases against him, most particularly the hush money payments case that's happening and ongoing in the New York state. That could end, and there could be a conclusion as early as next week. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
Well, it's election season in the UK as well now. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak launched his campaign on Wednesday at an East London exhibition centre, and analysts expect that the ruling Conservatives will lose to the Labour Party after 14 years in power. Sunak pointed to signs of economic recovery, including falling inflation and the fastest economic growth in nearly 3 years, as evidence of the Conservative Party's strength.
We have got inflation down from 11% to 2%. We have delivered on my first priority to drive inflation back to normal. Now, we've shown the country that it is only this Conservative Party that can deliver the economic stability, the foundation of our national success. The economy is growing again, faster than Germany, France and the United States. Wages have been rising faster than prices for 10 months now. The economy has turned a corner. Friends, our plan is working.
Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, the leader of the UK's opposition Labour Party, also kicked off his election campaign on Thursday. Addressing supporters at Gillingham Football Club in Kent, Starmer promised that voting for Labour would mean a vote to rebuild the country. UK's former chief prosecutor Starmer vowed to bring stability and change to a disgruntled electorate.
If you want change, you have to vote for it. And if you vote Labour, it's a vote to stop the chaos, it's a vote to turn the page, and it's a vote to rebuild our country together.
Let's get more on this now with DD India's Ollie Barrett, who sent this report from London.
The UK, I think, is ready for the general election in a logistical sense. It's held local elections on a near national scale as recently as earlier this month and is fairly well practiced at this kind of general election. There have been some controversies recently about new rules about exactly what kind of identification you need to take to the polls for elections here in the UK. But other than that, 6 weeks from now, Britain will go to the polls on July the 4th, and no expectations of any major problems at this point. One of the areas that authorities will be looking at, of course, and that has applied to several recent elections, but officials have made it clear it will apply to this one as well, as any kind of foreign interference. They will be very much on alert for that, hostile states trying to disrupt proceedings in any way. But as I say, authorities very much aware of that as a possibility that they might have to deal with. One of the nearly unique characteristics of this election is the fact that it's happening in July. We haven't had a July election in this country since 1945.
French President Emmanuel Macron, who is visiting the riot-hit archipelago of New Caledonia, has said that police reinforcements will stay there as long as needed following days of unrest. Macron said he decided to push back plans to reform voting laws on the overseas French territory, which has been hit by riots due to anger over the planned move. Macron's hastily arranged visit comes after 6 people were killed in the riots that have left a trail of damage. President Macron also urged for positive political dialogue with all parties and said that mining sites have been the worst affected by the riots. Well, that's all from me here in Washington, where that state visit from Kenyan President Ruto has just kicked off. Back now to you in the studio, Tanvi, in Delhi.
Thank you very much, Kate. Kate Fisher joining us all from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. Campaigning ends for the penultimate phase of India's general elections. 57 seats, including 7 in India's national capital, go to polls on Saturday. China launches punishment drills around Taiwan. Taiwan condemns the provocation. Local Taiwanese carry on with business as usual.
There is enormous power in people's narratives, especially when they tell their own story. We meet some people and communities who tell us how it is done.
Anything hazardous to humans is dumped here in North Chennai. We need to tell these stories because we are the ones who are affected by it.
Delhi Metro's philosophy is very clear. We want to generate non-conventional energy. Apart from the whatever is supplied by the grid, we want to generate a lot of energy through solar sources.
The benefit of running an MRF is that it protects me from the rain and harsh conditions outdoors. Work goes on even in hot weather and during the rainy season.
India is one of the climate swing states. We have to get India right to get emissions and to be able to really combat climate change.
As India, the world's largest democracy, gears up for the upcoming general elections, the spotlight shines on the powerful participation of Indian women in shaping the nation's political landscape. From the beginning of the Constitution,
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to Asia now. Late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has been buried in Iran's holy city of Mashhad. Thousands gathered in the holy city, praying and holding pictures of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian, who were killed in a helicopter crash over the weekend. Thursday's ceremonies follow a funeral prayer led by Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Tehran, attended by 40 foreign dignitaries. And DD India's Stuart Smith now joins us live from Baghdad for more on the story. Stuart, as thousands of Iranians pay tribute to Raisi, what is the latest you have on the funeral ceremony? Have they ended?
Well, the mayor of Mashhad claims it was 3 million people on the streets of the second largest city in Iran paying their respects to the late leader of the Iranian Republic. It started the day in Barjand, another city where thousands came out. Before then, the funeral convoy went to Mashhad, which is where the president will be laid to rest at one of Islam's holiest sites in Iran, a shrine to the Imam Reza, who is located in a 13th century complex with a golden dome, very fancy, and it's being seen as an incredible honor for the president to be buried at the same place as this imam. On the streets, you could see mourners throwing white flowers onto the convoy which was carrying the president's body. People were holding religious symbols, black flags were waving with statements from the Quran, and also there were mourners in black all over the city to pay their last respects, with others killed in that helicopters experiencing similar funerals in other parts of Iran. This comes after on Wednesday there was the official ceremony.
Okay, my colleague Stuart Smith reporting to us on the funeral ceremony, the final burial of late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a horrific chopper crash on Sunday. So, as you can see on your screen, the mortal remains of the president being laid to rest in Mashhad. China's military began 2 days of punishment exercises near Taiwan on Thursday, citing them as a response to perceived separatist actions. China deployed several fighter jets in various regions around Taiwan, including the Taiwan Strait, and conducted simulated attacks on strategic military targets. This move comes shortly after Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te, called on Beijing to cease its threats. Later, the island of Kinmen was seen relatively calm. Local Taiwanese carried on with their businesses as usual. More from Asia. A hospital in Bangkok said that 20 people who were on board the Singapore Airlines flight that hit severe turbulence and was diverted to Bangkok for an emergency landing on Tuesday remained in intensive care. According to the hospital, of the 40 people under treatment, 22 patients have spinal cord injuries, 6 have brain injuries and skull injuries. The oldest patient at the hospital is 83 years old and the youngest, a 2-year-old child who suffered a concussion. And up next, we bring you the latest on the largest democratic elections in the world, now in its last leg in India. So election campaigning for the 6th phase of India's general election concluded this evening. In India, the 6th phase of polling is all set to take place on May 25th in 57 constituencies. And the 6th phase will cover 8 states and union territories. In this phase, a total of 889 candidates are in the fray. Polling will also be held in Jammu and Kashmir's Anantnag and Rajouri Lok Sabha constituency. Last month, the Election Commission of India revised the polling date in the Anantnag-Rajouri Lok Sabha seat from May 7th to May 25th due to logistical, communication and natural barriers related to connectivity. Counting of votes for all the phases will be done on June the 4th. The colourful city of Jaunpur in India goes to polls on Saturday, and there are many issues for this city. Our correspondent Deepika Meheto sends us this report that tells you more about the needs and demands of Jaunpur voters.
Uttar Pradesh holds the maximum number of constituencies, which is 80, and one of the major important constituency is Jaunpur. Now, what makes Jaunpur more interesting is the tourist places, and right now we are at the Shahi Bridge of Jaunpur. That makes it really attractive. But right now, what is even more making Jaunpur attractive is the Lok Sabha election, and a very interesting fight over here. There is a 3-corner fight between the SP, the BSP and the BJP. But what exactly the contestants have done here, how has been the party performance here, and what exactly are the issues of the voters? Let's go and talk to the voters themselves and understand more about it.
Uttar Pradesh's Jaunpur is another hot seat of the state, which goes to polls on May 25. Team DD India got on ground zero to understand the issues and demands of the people of Jaunpur.
कब से काम कर रहे हैं आप लोग यहाँ पे?
10 साल से काम कर रहे हैं हम।
वोट करते हो?
जी जी।
आप भी वोट करने जाते हो?
हाँ भैया।
क्या चाहते हो, क्या मुद्दे हैं आपके?
सरकार से रोजगार चाहते हैं, सरकार के मुद्दे यही कुल मुद्दे। हरदम प्रशासन यहाँ से हटा देता है। हम लोग के कायदे से दुकान कहीं बना के दे दे, वो ठीक रहेगा।
वोट देने की अपील सबको करते हो आगे?
जी, मैं बूथ अध्यक्ष भी अपने गांव का हूँ।
तो गांव में जब आप जाते हो तो उनको वोट देने के लिए बोलते हो, वोट आइए दीजिए?
जी जी, लेके जाते हैं अपने गाड़ी से पहुँचाते हैं बूथ तक।
We talked to shopkeepers, fruit sellers and local residents there. A few say that they want more job opportunities, but most of them feel that Jaunpur has changed progressively.
लॉकडाउन के बाद से बहुत ज़्यादा कारोबार हम लोगों का डाउन हो गया। जैसे लॉकडाउन के पहले बहुत अच्छा कारोबार चल रहा था, इस वक्त कारोबार बहुत ही ज़्यादा ख़राब चल रहा है। बस ये चाहें कारोबार थोड़ा सा अच्छा चलने लगे, खुशहाली रहे, बस और क्या चाहते हैं भाई। हमें कुछ सरकार से नहीं चाहिए, हमारा घर अच्छा रहे, हमारा परिवार अच्छा रहे, जो सब लोग खुश रहे, बस यही चाहते हैं।
We explored the streets of Jaunpur and got in conversation with a few female voters also.
महिलाओं के लिए काम हुआ है जौनपुर?
बहुत अच्छा काम हुआ, हर चीज का फैसिलिटी मिला।
आपके आगे युवा जनरेशन भी है, बच्चे हैं, उनके लिए फ्यूचर बनता हुआ दिखता है जौनपुर में?
हाँ बनता है।
अब जौनपुर की लड़कियों को बाहर जाके नौकरी ढूंढने की जरूरत है?
नहीं है। नहीं है।
जौनपुर में अच्छा काम हुआ है?
हाँ हुआ अच्छा काम।
Hopes are high, enthusiasm is at its peak, and versions are many. But the final day will decide who wins the hearts of the voters.
So there you heard the voice of the people here, the voice of the voters who say that they have seen development, while many say they still await the day when they can see more job opportunities here in Jaunpur. Now especially the females say that now is the day that they don't await an opportunity for the female to be sent outside and work, because they can find an opportunity right here in Jaunpur. They've seen development. So this is Deepika bringing you all the ground zero report straight from Jaunpur with camera person Sanjeev for DD India.
And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. An accident at a campaign rally in Mexican state of Nuevo Leon claimed 9 lives, including 1 child, on Wednesday. A heavy gust of wind collapsed the stage, causing fatalities and injuring around 50 people, right now being treated in local clinics. Berlin has brought a new beer in production, one that uses sewage water. The beer uses sewage water, which goes through 4 purification stages. The Reuse Brew is a collaboration between the Chair of Brewery and Beverage Technology at the Technical University of Munich. The state-of-the-art technology makes it economical and efficient to use sewage water to brew beer. In one of the largest Princess Diana collection sales since 1997, Julien's Auctions will put more than 150 items of Princess Diana and other royals up for auction on June 27th in Los Angeles. The auction's top billing this time is a blue gown which Princess Diana wore for the 1986 Phantom of the Opera premiere. This gown is expected to go for $200,000 to $400,000, setting a new world record. And Thursday is a big day for India at the 77th edition of the Cannes Film Festival. Indian director Payal Kapadia's All We Imagine as Light is screening in the main competition section and is thus a contender for the prestigious Palme d'Or given to the director of the best film. Indian cinematographer Santosh Sivan will give a masterclass to Cannes delegates a day before being honoured with the Pierre Piangiu Award. This award is given every year in recognition of excellence in cinematography. And a Film and Television Institute of India's student Chidananda Nayak's short film Sunflowers Were the First One to Know is competing against 17 other student films under the La Cinef section. That's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can download our DD India mobile app for all the latest news and updates. We'll be back with more news as it breaks air on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from our entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.